Bernard Tobin here at Cereal Smart, catching up now with Deb Campbell from Agronomy Advantage. Deb, how's it going?
Great, glad to be here.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. I want to talk about spring cereal management strategy, something you've just presented here on at the conference, something we don't talk enough about. Give us a snapshot of spring cereals in the province right now. I mean, it's something we, again, doesn't get enough spotlight.
For sure, it's very much overshadowed by our winter wheat management here in Ontario. And the acres have been relatively flat for almost a decade now, and certainly not seeing growth, maybe even tailing off a little bit. And we're seeing that play out in research, genetic development, struggling to maintain competitiveness with the other crops here in Ontario, and that's a real problem for farmers. And some of that is genetic development, but not all of it. We can certainly look at our management aspects, and there's probably some room to beef that up too.
Yeah, wheat, oats, and barley. A lot of your numbers in the presentation today, down around that 60 bushel per number. But you said, hey, can we grow 70, 80 bushels? For sure. And you mentioned a few things that growers really need to be thinking about, and that is, first thing, maybe seek out some new genetics.
Absolutely. We don't get a lot of opportunity to turn over new genetics. It's not nearly as rapid as it is in other commodities. However, when it does happen, it's very measurable. So we need to be actively looking for those new genetics and putting them in the field, measuring them, testing them, seeing how they're responding. And with those new genetics is coming improved agronomics. That's part of what's delivering those yield gains. And we can push those. We can absolutely push those and be competitive on a cereal production standpoint.
Let's talk about nitrogen. Sometimes we don't think about pushing nitrogen on those spring cereals, but we had some great insights on barley. I mean, you can really push some yields.
Absolutely. Spring cereals are very responsive to management, nitrogen, fungicides, etc. And the data plays out very consistently that moving from 30, 50, 60 pounds of nitrogen up to 90, even 120 units of nitrogen, the yield response is there. It is somewhat regional. That plays out much more consistently in Midwestern Ontario and Eastern Ontario, maybe less so, in Northern Ontario, but less so in Eastern Ontario. But the yield response is there. We do have to make sure we keep it standing, of course. The more we push nitrogen, particularly on oats and barley, there are some concerns there to keep it standing. But pulling in those new genetics that have better lodging scores, along with more nitrogen, that all helps to move the dial.
And there might be a role for plant growth regulators in the future in helping, helping those cereals stand.
Absolutely. Certainly with spring cereals, particularly again barley and oats, we need to have a PGR strategy there. If we're going to move nitrogen up, we need to account for lodging. That's the risk that we're potentially increasing, and those PGRs fit into that strategy quite nicely of intensive cereal management and trying to optimize grain fill and keep it standing during that period.
Another thing to talk about is fungicides, and winter wheat, we're always talking about what the return on investment is there, but you put up some information on spring cereals, and there's some big bang for the buck there.
Absolutely. So part of the lag in genetic development is also coming in less disease tolerance, and so we can make up for that with the fungicide. And in winter wheat we might be looking at a 6 or 7 bushel yield response, whereas in barley it could be a 15 or 20 bushel yield response to that application of fungicide. Very critical to reaching those top end yields.
Yeah. I guess the final point is, Phil Needham was here today talking about the details. The details matter, and your feeling was that if farmers can find the time and put the effort in on those spring cereals and pay attention to the details, they'll get a return on that investment.
Absolutely. We've done such a good, tremendous effort on winter wheat management and raising the awareness on response. And the response in spring cereals is as good or even better. And taking some of that thinking that we've come to use and is now the norm in winter wheat, apply that thinking to spring grains. And instead of looking at 70 and 80 bushel yield potential, let's look at 120 bushel yield potential. You have to go there, you have to think there in order to pull the management along with it.
Great insights, Deb. Hey, thanks for stopping by.
Thank you.